So the TLDR is that Nolan's Odyssey is an exceptionally good film, but not a particularly faithful adaptation. Honestly, I think I'll probably just make that the thumbnail. Great film, crap adaptation. Okay, now that that's out of the way, the rest of this video is spoiler city. I am not going to refrain from spoilers at all, so decide whether you're staying right now. Great. For everyone still here, I am ecstatic to report that Nolan's Odyssey is entirely built around Xenia. Except instead of calling it Xenia, they call it Zeus's Law, which honestly I don't have a problem with because Zeus is the god of Xenia. Now, Nolan made some changes to the Odyssey and to the way the story deals with Xenia. I quite liked some of the changes and absolutely despised one particular change. But let's start with the changes I liked. Nolan brought real scholarship around the Late Bronze Age collapse into the film. Obviously, he speculates about it in the context of the story, but I thought the way it was slotted in was really clever. So, quick rundown on the Late Bronze Age collapse. It was a collapse of many Mediterranean and Middle Eastern civilizations around 1200 to 1100 BCE, and had no single cause. There was localized climate change that caused famines, a breakdown of trade routes, raiding and pillaging across the Mediterranean by the sea peoples, and many other issues. All of that was too much for the systems of those societies to take, and so they collapsed. Nolan ties all three problems I listed back to one root cause, which is the violation of Xenia, and the way he does it is very clever. The first breadcrumb we get is the mention that Agamemnon wanted to sack Troy because he couldn't stand that they controlled trade routes with the East. Then we get mentions of the Sea Peoples who are pillaging their way across the Mediterranean. In Sparta, Menelaus tells Telemachus that Sparta is ready to drive off the Sea Peoples if they reach their shores, and asks him if Ithaca can say the same. Of course, Menelaus is concerned because the rumors of the Sea People are getting closer and closer and closer. But the irony, which Menelaus never realizes, is that the Greeks are the Sea People. Future editing, Keelan jumping in here, we don't actually know who the Sea Peoples are in real life, in real scholarship, because they didn't actually leave any written records behind. The Greeks returning from war being the Sea Peoples is Nolan's interpretation. Just wanted to make that clear. Now, back to the video. After the Greeks left Troy, all the different fleets had trouble finding resources, because Troy controlled the trade routes, and so by sacking Troy, they severed the trade routes. Because no one could feed them, they pillaged every settlement they found, stripping the land of its resources, thus causing famine, and rumors spread of the Sea Peoples who were wreaking havoc across the Mediterranean. These Sea Peoples had no respect for Xenia, so invoking Zeus's law would not protect you. The idea spread like plague, and Xenia started to collapse across Greek civilization. In the end, Odysseus realizes that by violating Xenia so thoroughly in Troy, the Greeks betrayed the foundation of their entire society. Then when they returned home, they brought that violation and betrayal with them. Without Xenia, there was no order, and without order, there could be no society. To reinforce that idea, Nolan has Odysseus go into voluntary exile at the end of the film, leaving Telemachus as king of Ithaca, because Telemachus has not violated Xenia and can therefore carry their civilization forward. Other than Odysseus, who realizes all that at the very end of the film, Helen is the only person who seems to have come to this conclusion on her own. She explicitly states that the war was waged for Agamemnon's hubris and greed. Well, I don't think she specifically used the word hubris, but it was implied. At the same time, she very clearly feels a great deal of guilt, and she whispers to Telemachus to tell Penelope that she's sorry for all the destruction that was wrought in her name. But of course, in the film, we know it wasn't Helen's fault at all. It was the fault of prideful, greedy warmongers like Agamemnon. It's very clear to me that the message Nolan is trying to convey with the Odyssey is that we need to retain a world order based on mutual respect, or Xenia, or Zeus's law, as it's referred to throughout the film. It's a very relevant message at this moment in history, with people like Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump actively tearing down the frameworks of respect in modern society. So why the hell did he remove the Phaeacians? Yeah, we've reached the part of the video where I get angry at the changes I didn't like. The excellent hospitality that Odysseus receives from Alcinous, Nausicaa, and others in Phaeacia is an essential frame narrative to the various examples of Xenia being upheld or violated throughout Odysseus' struggle to get home. The Phaeacians are the counterpoint to the decay of civilization. They are proof that society can survive if they just choose respect and reciprocity instead of regression and rage. Instead, Nolan gives the frame narrative to Calypso. Of all the possible characters, Calypso? In the epic poem, she keeps him prisoner for 7 years and only lets him go when she's forced to by the gods. In the film, she feeds him lotus flowers, yet Nolan also gives her the role of the Lotus Eaters, which is equally dumb. Anyway, she feeds him lotus flowers to keep his memories from him so he won't leave her, then suddenly has a change of heart and decides to stop feeding him lotus flowers so he can tell her about his travels because she's decided he's ready to go home now. It's such an unfathomably stupid narrative decision, and it makes an absolute mess of Calypso's character. Just put back the Phaeacians. Put back Alcinous and Nausicaa and Arete. Just to clarify, Alcinous and Arete are king and queen of Phaeacia, and Nausicaa is their daughter. Anyway, moving on. I don't think Circe was done justice. The moment I saw a lion, I knew Circe was coming up, but she was living completely alone. No nymphs to protect or anything like that. She also had her sister turned into a bird, which I assume was a reference to King Picus of Latium. But he was distinctly not Circe's sister. Like, is this Pasiphae or something? Or, I don't know. I've mentioned this in a previous video, but Circe's whole thing is that she bends the rules of the system she lives in as far as she can to protect herself from its injustices. In the Odyssey in particular, she's also protecting her nymphs from those same injustices. That just doesn't come across in the way she's written in Nolan's version. We get a relatively quick encounter with her, then we move on. In the epic poem, they stay with her for a whole year, and we get just a lot more. That upset me quite a lot, because Circe is my favorite character in the Odyssey, and while she called out some injustices of the systems in Greek society, it was very superficial, and her scene was just way too quick. Let's be clear. If I went into this expecting a faithful adaptation of the Odyssey, I would be incredibly pissed off. I am pissed off by the assassination of Circe's character and by the removal of the Phaeacians, but I can at least acknowledge that this is a good film taken in isolation. Taken as an adaptation of the Odyssey, it sucks. And then let's talk about some small details. All the studio logos at the start of the film being rendered in bronze was a cool touch, since the story is set in the Bronze Age. There are no Olympian gods in the film. There are gods, because Circe and Calypso are both gods, but the film doesn't treat them like gods. Zendaya's Athena isn't actually Athena either. She's a manifestation of Odysseus' guilt over the sack of Troy, who takes the form of a girl who was executed in front of him, which he could have stopped but didn't. Some of the lines, when two characters were talking and no one else was around, felt a little stilted, as though they weren't directly reacting to the delivery of the person across from them. I think that might have been a product of the way the scenes were shot with the IMAX blimp and the whole mirror system. Personally, I think the standout performances were Tom Holland's Telemachus and Lupita Nyong'o's Helen. They were both very understated performances, which makes sense for someone who is royalty and has sort of been raised to repress their emotions their whole lives. I think they both kind of hit on their characters, on how their characters would be very, very well. Anyway, Telemachus was quite sanitized, and his harsher actions from the epic poem were offloaded to Odysseus and Penelope, like killing the suitors, which Odysseus ordered him not to take part in, and punishing the disloyal servants, which was done by Penelope. I think that was to further reinforce the idea of telemarketers as the future of civilization and the older generation as no longer fit to rule because they've betrayed the foundation of their society. I thought that was a good change because it reinforces that this is a myth. It's actively encoding values that are important to the culture it comes from and making them relevant to the culture it's being presented to. You know, the whole losing the foundation of civilization leading to systems collapse thing. Yeah, I think that's about it. I would give the Odyssey a solid 8 out of 10. That's ignoring the fact that it's an unfaithful adaptation. That I just can't get past the stilted delivery in the one-on-one conversations between characters, which is why I can't give it a 9 or a 10. So yeah, thanks for watching, and please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments.